Von Schweetz design from Wreck-It Ralph or Wreck-It Ralph 2, and it's just a nice close-up of her. She's always so, I don't know, she's a character that I feel like I can really sympathize with because she's in this fantastical pink world, but yet she's kind of, I don't know, sarcastic and snarky, and I feel like that represents me fairly well, sometimes at least. I hope you guys like this one as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see my future videos as well.
So we are going to begin by creating this gorgeous background of swirly pinks, purples, and blues, just kind of pastels that are pretty, just cotton candy little background, mixing them together. If you want to add in like a little bit of a pearly white, that's also kind of just goes right along with this, makes it look like a cloudy swirly sky. I'm then going to grab some star-shaped ghost glitter. Ghost glitter is a clear but iridescent glitter that once you put it on top of something, the colors from underneath show through, but it picks up the light really well. And I'm going to just grab and place a few of those near the upper portion of the nail. Vanellope is going to take over the bottom portion, so you don't need to add anything there. And then I'm going to encapsulate the whole thing to protect it and make sure that those glitters have a nice coating over the top of them so that they don't accidentally pop through or get filed off. Make sure that they are completely covered, and then after you are done with that, you can file it into shape. Make sure whenever you're working on top of a layered design like this, as you are filing, you are cognizant of how deeply you are filing so that you don't accidentally file off a layer. And now you can begin sculpting Miss Vanellope. So when you're sculpting any character, we're going to go into some character basics here. When you're sculpting any character that you want, pick anything, mainly think cartoons though. When you're sculpting any cartoon character, you want to look at some very basic things because they don't follow human anatomy like if you were, doing a person. There's some differences. Usually when you're sculpting something with human anatomy, there's certain laws that you follow, the corner of your eye matches up with the side of your nostril, etc., etc. That's not the case when you're doing something that's a cartoon character. You get to play around with the laws. However, if you're doing a cartoon character that is well known, that you want to replicate, you have to follow their laws. And I have done a character breakdown class, a live class that we went through. I've actually done two of them. I went through one that was Mickey Mouse and one that was Elsa, and I will put links to both of those in the description box below. So if this is a topic you want to explore further and more in depth, there are two styles of kind of recreating characters in those videos. I would start with Mickey Mouse though. He's got the one that I think transfers the best into sculpting. They were both drawing classes, but the concepts are still there. So when you're going through this, you are going to want to look at the distance. You're going to want to look at the distance from forehead to chin and how that compares to cheek or the sides of the face. You're going to want to look, is this face square? Do the cheeks pop out? Is the chin pointy? Is the chin square? Does the chin stick out at all? All of these are questions that you're going to want to answer and ask yourself when you do that first initial face shape. And then from there, you're going to want to ask yourself questions about the hair. Does this character's hair, well, first off, do they have any hair? No, that, you never know. Does the hair on the forehead, is it tall? Does it have volume to it? Does it stick up? And if so, how far does it stick up? Is it just slightly off the head? Is it fairly like slicked down, or does it have some volume to it? What shape does it? Does it have like a swoosh to it? Is it curly? Is it straight? All of these questions you have to ask yourself, and you have to be able to answer them and look at reference photos and see if you can determine the answers. And the more you sculpt characters, the less scary they become, the more second nature these questions become. And I've talked about this before, but to me, art, when you are creating something, and especially when you're replicating something that you have a specific end goal that's like something else, when you are doing either art imitating art, where you're making, a character that you are familiar with, or if you're making art that is of something realistic like a lion or a tiger or a bowl of fruit, whatever it may be, if you're doing something that has a real tangible outcome that's just like something else in the universe, when you're doing art that has that, asking yourself questions, knowing what questions to ask and how to answer them is really the biggest key, because you can't sculpt something that looks exactly like something else if you can't figure out how that something else looks. Yes, you can look at it and you can get a vague description of it, but it's not specific down to the detail that you need to know in order to replicate it. So same thing like with Miss Vanellope and her eyebrows. What angle are her eyebrows? Now, I did not sculpt her with enough forehead, so I'm going to go back through and fix that. That's the other thing that's just nice to kind of keep in mind, is that there are always opportunities to correct what may feel like a mistake. So you can always go back through and fix things. And then with her eyes, as you can see, her eyes have a very domed top portion. Her upper lash line is almost a half circle, and then it is much more cut off closer to a straight line along the bottom lash line? That's a question that you would have to ask yourself, or, be able to. You don't necessarily have to ask these questions in a question format, especially once it becomes more comfortable to you. But in the beginning, I highly recommend doing that. Not only is that a good way to kind of keep yourself in check so you don't go sideways and just start drawing or sculpting and lose track of kind of this basic take a deep breath, what's next way of working. But if you do it that way and you start asking yourselves these questions in question format, you're going to take more time to answer them. If it's a quick, how are her eyes? White, okay, they're round, okay, then you don't take the time to really think about it. If you go, okay, what shape is the upper lash line? How wide is her eye? And you take the time to really slow down, ask as many questions as you can, and get all of the answers and scoop them up into your little knowledge bank. Your outcome is going to increase and get so much more specific. And it's little things that you need to just kind of keep track of. And like I said, I have talked about this in live classes before, and in especially that Mickey Mouse class, there are a lot of tips and tricks for, taking visual measurements and keeping track of all those things. But it really comes back down to being able to come up with the questions to ask and then being able to answer them. And the more you practice, the more second nature it'll become. And it comes down to doing everything when you're sculpting. Same thing, even like with the swirls in the background. Make a plan ahead of time. Are your swirls going to are they going to be an ombre, pink, purple, blue? Are you going to grab a bunch of different colors and just swirl them together? That's not a question you have to ask about what what you're replicating, unless you are replicating specific swirls. It's a question about what you want the outcome to be. And if you don't have a steadfast plan ahead of time, even if it's just a plan in your head, your outcome isn't going to be as precise as you want it to be. Maybe your swirls ended up looking really muddy because you didn't have a plan, and then you did something, you didn't like it, you tried to cover it up, which works. It does work to do that a lot of times, but it might not just have quite that precision that you want, that you're looking for. And so just go over everything you do the next time you're drawing something, sculpting something, and rethink about it. Take a step back and analyze everything you do. Figure it out, And really, I know I've said this in this video even, but the changes that you'll see are just incredible once you stop and slow down and don't rush with it. And for me, like I said, these questions have become very second nature to me. I ask them and answer them and look at them and do all of this in a flash. And I have clients that, they'll show me a picture of something and I'll be like, okay, so a green glitter tip with white and yellow lines that go from the sides in. And my clients will be like, how did you know that? Well, I know how to analyze a photo really quickly because I'm experienced at it. And it goes into everything that you sculpt and that you do. So as you continue working on Vanellope, in any character really, I love to sculpt pieces on a nail form backing and then place them on. The difficult part with that is that you don't have the sizing. You don't have the comparison really right up next to it because you're sculpting something separately and adding it on. So it's a little bit more of a approximation, which goes against my whole make sure everything is precise and exact speech that we've been listening to. Thank you very much though for listening to that. So as you're doing this, maybe you'll have to fix something with it. Hold up the piece and see if it fits. As long as it fits, proceed. If it doesn't, especially with something like these thin acrylic pieces, if they're still obviously firm but a little bit flexible, it is so easy to trim them with a manicure scissors. You could attach your Vanellope's ponytail, and then you're also going to want to add a pink bow to it. That part I did also miss in the video. I had a couple pieces of this video that decided to cut off on me, so thank you for that, camera. I'm just going to take the tip of my brush and carve a couple little lines in that ponytail, and then you can go through with acrylic paint and do your detailing. Absolutely the same process when you're doing the detailing. Look at, what color outlines Vanellope has. If it's a cartoon character, there's not always outlines, and in the most new stuff, there is not outlines all the time, but a lot of times there is. Even if they're really subtle and really small and you don't immediately see them, they are there. Her hair has a blue a blue hue to it. So I'm going to take a blue paint that dries down with a clarity to it. So that blue pigment will just kind of act like a little glow over the top of her hair. The black will still show through, but in those areas where I'm just loading up the blue paint, once it dries down, it will definitely become a little bit more subtle. I'm going to be adding the green in her eyes, a couple different shades of green. They really go with her sweatshirt. And then we're going to go over the other eye. Same thing. Look at the position of the irises in her eyes. One of them is straight in the middle of her eye. The other one is off to the side, which might seem contradictory, but when you're looking at somebody, that is how your eyes focus. That's how her eyes are focusing. And that is how you want to paint them. The more you look at things, the more you see. I'm going to do the outlines around her nose and her face. I did add a little bit of pink to her nose at one point during the sculpting and a little bit of a pink shimmer to her cheeks as well. I'm going to add a very subtle lip color to her, kind of a mauvey nude color, just to kind of give her a little bit of lips. Go over, finish the detailing on her eyes, give her irises. Keep adding all of these details as you go. As you are working on a character, any character, if you aren't planning to do much for black outlining, I would really just focus that around the eyes, especially the upper lash line and the pupil. If you know, there's a few characters like the Grinch, for instance, who does not have a black pupil usually. He's got a red pupil, but otherwise almost every character does have black. So if you're going to save your intense black color for anything, I would make sure you save it for the eyes. Add a couple little fluffy hairs that are escaped. I'm going to mix some white in with my little bit of blue to get some more actually vivid blue highlights. I'm going to be adding those. It takes just the tiniest bit of white in this paint to make a more opaque blue color. Just add a few little blue lines here and there throughout her hair. Brighten them up. As you see, that original layer of blue really kind of toned down. It's still there. It shows more in person than it does in video, but it definitely adds kind of just a blue overtone to her hair. Going to add the little bit of the pink strings on her zipper, a highlight in her eyes. She's getting so close. We're going to add her teeth. And then once you're happy with all of the painting on her, she's got the outlines wherever she needs outlines. She's got highlights. She's got her hair color, stripes on her bow. Her eyes look like they are alive. I'm going to just finish off the last few outlines on her sweatshirt with the same green I used in her eyes. Like I said, her eyes really go with her sweatshirt. Then after that's all done, you can go ahead and apply some top coat. I'm going to use gel sealer on the top for the background. I know you can't really see much of those stars. If you were doing this as part of a set, I would really recommend adding some of those stars with swirly backgrounds on some of the other nails. I also use gel sealer over her eyes, and then a 3D glaze that is slightly shiny over her hair, and then matte top coat over the bow and over her sweatshirt and the little bit of her face that is still hasn't had top coat. And then using the tiniest little drops of a jewelry gel, I'm going to apply little dots of that into her hair, and then I'm going to place down caviar beads that are different candy colors and a couple little star studs, just little things because her hair has candy pieces in it. And I don't have anything that is exact little candy pieces, but these little mixed caviar beads that are a whole bunch of different colors are the perfect substitute. I'm going to specifically use colors that are already in this design, pinks, blues, purples. I do have the gold in her hair, but that's also been used in this design because she does have some gold in her eyes. I'm just going to grab a little variety of these. I have these mixed caviar beads, like I said, that are a bunch of different colors that I got off of Amazon a little while ago. And I've used them on my mother before, like around a crystal cluster just to fill them in. And it's the strangest thing in a actual practical use. All of the color wears off in a couple days and they just turn kind of a steel gray, which is unfortunate. Otherwise, they'd be super fun. But for a design like this, it works. And if you have better quality, colorful caviar beads, it would work in a more practical sense as well. I hope you guys like this design and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well. Bye!